Cam Ward continues to improve at Titans practices here. We're going to be tracking his progress throughout OTAs as we are in week 2, phase 3. Let's get into it. This is the Music City Audible.
Is getting up at 5 a.m. the norm for you, or getting to work at 5 a.m. the norm for you, or is that just something that you're doing this summer?
It's just my process, just how I've always been in college, even to now. And it's really just, how I get everything in, what I need to get in, whether it's film, treatment-wise, just, I got to get everything in to start my day, to end my day, and, by whatever time, you got to get it done.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast, the go-to podcast for Titans fans, diehards only. Thank you all for tuning in. Presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, serving the community since 1985 in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. Justin, did you show up to work at 5 a.m. today like Cam Ward has been doing?
You know what? I showed up at 6:15, and actually, I'm on East Coast, so it was 5:15 Central when I showed up to work. So me and Cam Ward, two peas in a pod, we're up and at it at the same time.
Yeah, you're getting an early start to your day. Cam Ward there talking after practice about his routine. It came out, I think, at the end of last week that he's been getting up at 5 a.m. or getting to the building at 5 a.m., doing film sessions with other rookie receivers, but it's not new. This is not new for Cam Ward. He's been getting up and getting in the building at 5 a.m., dating back to college. So this is just a guy who's dedicated. There was a question in Brian Callahan's press conference. I think Easton Freeze, our buddy, asked it actually about, is he going to burn out? Is this too much? Are you telling him to remind him it's a long season? And Brian Callahan talked about how this is a marathon. We're going all the way into January. It's longer than what you're used to in what was your college schedule, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be something that Cam Ward burns out on because he has been doing it for years. And yeah, the season's a little bit longer in the NFL, but the off season in college is just as long as the NFL, spring training, summer training, all of that. So I'm not too worried about Cam Ward burning out. In fact, I love hearing that the new Titans quarterback is in the building, working early, doing film study. And we're going to talk about today, Justin, what's going on in week 2 at Titans OTAs. And that was the first thing that stood out to me was the Cam Ward 5 a.m. story.
Yeah, I'll say this. Encouraging to hear that he's there. Look, this is who he is, right? I would say dating back to the pre-draft process, but really his whole life, right? This is the kind of worker he's been ever since he's been trying to make his dream come true. It was encouraging to hear that not only is he there so early, but that Brian Callahan's like, hey, you got to take it a bit easier. Because anytime you're trying something new, there's a new challenge. And for Cam Ward, playing quarterback in the National Football League is a new challenge. Let's be clear, right? So anytime you're facing a new challenge, that's exciting. And you tend to go a little hard in the beginning because you're so anxious to prove that you could meet that challenge and you could overcome everything that's going to be thrown your way. But it's nice that he has to be told, hey, you've got to scale it back a little. Brian Callahan will be the first to tell you, this, I know this, everyone knows this. Rather have a guy I got to tell to leave the building than say, hey, you're not here enough, right? You show up 5 minutes later, you're 2 minutes early, and you leave right on time. No, you want a guy that works his butt off, that you got to be like, hey, maybe you got to go home, catch a nap once in a while, enjoy some family time. So Cam Ward is as hard of a worker as advertised.
Yeah, totally agree. And Calvin Ridley even mentioned, he was asked, what do you think about Cam Ward getting in the building at 5 a.m.? And he said something like, if he's not doing that, we need to get another quarterback as a joke. And he's like, no, you love hearing that's the kind of worker that he is. And here we're talking about what we got out of the open media session on Tuesday at Titans OTAs, where they ran a lot of third down work. And reports out of OTAs are that the Titans offense more or less dominated the defense in this drill of third down work. I guess that's encouraging from the standpoint of the Titans had one of the worst offenses in the league last year and by far the worst passing attack in the league, and that Cam Ward can be, the guy that helps turn that around. It's also, somewhat discouraging. It's the same balance that we're always trying to strike throughout this portion of the NFL calendar is like, well, is the defense bad? Is the Titans defense going to be bad because they're getting dominated by a rookie out there in his, first couple weeks of live reps against the defense? No, I'm not worried about that right now. Obviously, the defense is not scheming, but something that I saw in the reports from Tuesday's practice is that it was a little up and down for Cam Ward. It was a slow start, I would say, kind of day for him miscommunication with Bryce Oliver, a missed throw also in that early 7-on-7 period. But then he picked it up and he started to put it together, and he was connecting with guys all over the field. Apparently had a really beautiful throw downfield to James Prochet that he may or may not have been able to bring in, connecting with Xavier Restrepo to move the chains during this third down work. And we know that is going to be, a connection that we're hoping to see carry over from their time together at Miami. But I think what stood out the most to me about all this, number one, on the Cam Ward starting slow and then picking up towards the end of the towards the second half of practice. That's kind of what he did a lot at Miami in real games. First quarter is not always the best. There were some games, Iowa State game, his last game of the season, where he puts up 30 plus points in the first half. But there were other games where Miami's down 10, 14, 17 points towards the end of the first half or in the second half. And then he puts a bunch of touchdown drives together to bring his team back. So I don't know if that's just maybe how he operates a little bit. But the other thing that stood out to me was that it was reported Cam Ward got the lion's share of the reps in this open practice, which we know last week Brian Callahan said, don't even worry about the rotation of these quarterbacks and the order, and none of that matters. He called it irrelevant to our process right now. But then, you come back the next week and it's like, okay, let's put a little bit more on Cam's plate. We know Cam's going to be our guy. We haven't named him the starter yet, but we're going to keep putting more and more on his plate to see what he can handle. And obviously, third down is the money down. So in a practice where you're focusing solely on third down work for the most part, good to get your rookie quarterback the majority of the reps there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I don't think it's a surprise that he got better as the practice went on. Like you said, one of the first times he received majority of reps. I believe this was their 5th OTA. So they're about halfway through that process, gradually putting more on his plate. As you said, showing some chemistry with the guys, him and Calvin Ridley. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The connection with Xavier Restrepo. They were seen working together on the field well after practice ended on deep routes. I believe it was Teron Davenport that reported that. So some really promising stuff. I mean, all the interviews with Cam too, like just some really, really great quotes that came out of this practice session continues to sort of reinforce the type of confidence he carries himself with, the demeanor that I would go as far to say it's already a little bit infectious around the team. The last point I'll make, the first thing you talked about, I'm not going to get too much into it. I'm not concerned about the defense. It is interesting, though, because this time of year, it's usually the defense that's ahead of the offense, even though they're not scheming, not playing a vanilla scheme. Still, usually that offense is playing catch up this time of year. Yes, this is year 2 of the Brian Callahan system, but it's also year 2 of Denard Wilson's system, and the offense has a rookie quarterback. So you would think the defense, I read a report coming out of Seattle yesterday that the defense dominated the offense all day long. No surprise, because it's year 2 of Mike McDonald's defense, and they've got a new quarterback. Well, not the case in Tennessee, where it looks like the offense got the better of the defense today. So it's interesting. It's something, kind of stick a pin in it and revisit it down the road if the defense is not good this season. But by all accounts, I think all most people care about, and rightfully so, is the form of Cam Ward. So, this is going to be a year where they're still kind of, building towards what they're going to be in 2026 and beyond. The best thing that could happen to them is for Cam Ward to be dominant.
Yeah, that's a great point you make there. And I'm glad you said that too, because it reminded me of something I wanted to say, which is, yes, right now in early June, midway through OTAs, a couple months still before training camp even starts. Yes,
Cam, right? A month and a half?
A month. Well, it's mid to end July.
Less than 2 months. I'm just trying to fire up our listeners. It's less than 2 months.
You're right. Training camp's less than 2 months away. No, but until we get there, I definitely want to emphasize what you said there, which is that how Cam Ward is performing and how he's progressing and improving is all I care about right now as someone who's covering the team for this podcast, as someone who roots for this team, as a fan. Like, is it awesome that Femi Oladejo is working on specific techniques with Ben Bloom, and that the defense as a whole, the pass rush, is working on having more coordinated rushes when there's only 4 or 5 men in the rush, so that one guy doesn't have to beat his blocker to get pressure on the quarterback, but that they're all working together. All of that is amazing. Is it interesting that Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon got yanked out of a third down drill because he false started and was replaced with John Ojukwu? And what does that tell us about the battle for that swing tackle or back end of the roster tackle depth? All of it is going to be interesting, but let's be real. It's early June. It's June 3rd as we sit here and record this podcast. what we care about right now is how does the rookie quarterback look? So in case you're wondering, that's what the focus of this particular pod is going to be. It's going to be on Cam Ward's development. And as we said in the intro, tracking his progress. And one of the things that he mentioned as something that he's working on and where he said he needs to have the most, see the most improvement right now is working the protections. And he said he's even working with Coach Callahan. He specified the offensive line coach, Coach Callahan, not the head coach, Coach Callahan, on these protections, because obviously whatever calls he makes, or if it's the center making the calls or him making the calls, whoever it is, obviously Bill Callahan has a huge hand in what those protections look like. And so it's really cool to see that Cam Ward is like seeking out other resources around the building, working not just with Brian Callahan, the head coach, Nick Holtz, the offensive coordinator, Bo Hardigree, his quarterback's coach, but also Bill Callahan as he continues to improve the protection, because that's one of the biggest things for a rookie quarterback to adjust to. And we saw how much Will Levis struggled with protections and understanding where blitzes were coming from and where pressure was coming from, and all the things that NFL defenses are doing nowadays to simulate pressure and overload one side and then drop guys into coverage. Your protection scheme has to be buttoned up. And that is one area I think that we can, if we're going to track the progress of Cam Ward, that is one that's going to stand out to me, is the protection game and who's calling it, because we don't even know this yet. We know Lloyd Cushenberry's still rehabbing from a torn ACL, right? Is Cam Ward the one calling out the protections as a rookie just a couple months after being drafted by this team? Or is Corey Levin, the backup center who's working with the ones, is he calling it out right now? Is it a combination? I'd love to know more about that, but the important thing is that Cam Ward is not only working on the protections, he knows that that's a key area he's got to improve.
And I don't know if I've missed it, but wouldn't you love for someone to ask Bill Callahan what he thinks about Cam Ward? I mean, seriously, a guy who's been around so long, has had a chance to work with so many quarterbacks as an extension of his offensive line. I'd love to know his honest 2 cents on what he sees. I know we're asking Brian Callahan and Nick Holtz and Bo Hardigree. I'd love for someone to ask Bill Callahan, what do you see from your rookie quarterback? And it's June 3rd, as you said, but correct, maybe this is revisionist history. I don't think it is. I don't remember getting a lot of encouraging reports last June that Will Levis looked good. Like, I feel like it was a majority of he's struggling. And we did, what everyone does in that case, where it's like, oh, it's June, he's a young quarterback, he's going to get better. No, it's really encouraging, to hear that Cam Ward's getting better at every practice, because sometimes the information that comes out in June is pretty telltale come September.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely hyped up Will Levis. I remember posting a lot of his throws on this very YouTube channel as shorts and tweeting out every clip I could, because, I mean, if Cam, like, Will Levis was pretty good clout, right? You post a clip of Will Levis, it's going to get a lot of interaction. Cam Ward is that times 1,000. It's like, it's ridiculous how well like, we've seen the clip from last week of him throwing the little sidearm throw, like Adam Schefter's reposting it. Big accounts are Ari Myra, like all these huge, like
the aggregators ran crazy with it.
Yes, and it's becoming, Cam Ward is starting to become a bigger deal than he was when he wasn't talked about at all on draft night, the moment after he was drafted. But yeah, I think it's sort of putting the league on notice that, like, Cam Ward's going to bring eyeballs, he's going to bring attention, and that's why we're continuing to talk about him, because again, from my standpoint, this is what fans care most about right now, is how does Cam Ward look. Another area that seems to be continuing to improve, you mentioned it earlier, is the connection with Calvin Ridley. They have pretty clear and open lines of communication between reps. They've talked very highly of each other. Cam Ward called Calvin Ridley, listed him as a top 5 receiver in the NFL on that Fortnite stream before the draft. He called him a top 5 receiver in the NFL again after today's practice. What did you see out there between the Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley connection?
Well, I thought one of my favorite clips was the one of the Calvin Ridley interview after practice, where I'll say this, he's talking, Calvin Ridley says all the right things, talks about working on chemistry with him. I'm asking him, what does he think? I've got to be where he wants me to be. So it's not him coming up. I'm going up to him saying, where do you want me? Even if at one point he almost said, even if, the throw's not right, I'm going up and saying, what could I have done differently on that rep? At one point he stops midway through that, quote, and he says, I just love him, man. Because he goes on and on about the work ethic. So from the day that I met him, I knew he was going to be in the playbook. I knew he had that calm demeanor. I knew he was going to fire us up, rally around us. I knew he'd be a hard worker up at 5 a.m. like you talked about earlier. What I continue to take away from that is I don't think we could overstate the importance of the chemistry between Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley. We know this wide receiver room it's kind of like Calvin Ridley and Friends. I've used that term before. There are only two proven receivers in the other room, and the other one is entering his age 33 season in Tyler Lockett, who we know is probably Tyler Boyd-ish, at this point in his career. So the Titans are really reliant on Calvin Ridley to have a good year. He had 64 catches for 1,017 yards last year. It was a bit up and down. He did, surpass 1,000 yards. And I put this stat out in an article like a month ago on Titan Sized. I'm bringing it back up today. Only 67.5% of his targets were deemed catchable last year. That was third worst in the league among receivers that saw 75 targets. So, yeah, there were things Calvin really could have done better last year. We know he had an issue with some drops, but he obviously suffered greatly from inaccurate quarterback play. I mean, the proof is in the numbers. That data comes from Fantasy Points data, by the way. Very, very good stuff from them and their data analysis. So with Cam Ward coming in, an accurate quarterback, their chemistry is so important. There's a legit possibility here that Calvin really has a really good, strong season in Tennessee. And the way you see the two of them talking about each other, I think you're seeing what could be the start of a pretty special relationship.
Yeah, I've got more on Calvin Ridley and their connection here, but first let's take a quick break to remind everyone that this podcast is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, and you know what? We're going to do a full I'll drink to that, presented by Sinkers Beverages on this, because something that came out after practice today was a clip of Cody Barton mic'd up. And I know, I just went on a whole spiel about nobody cares about anything besides Cam Ward. We do. We care about the whole team. Of course we do. We're just saying Cam Ward's progress is the most, I guess, the most intriguing point of interest here. But Cody Barton out there, another new Titan coming over from Denver last year, is a guy that when he did his first media appearance a few weeks ago, you could tell he had a lot of personality. He was making sarcastic jokes. You could see that coming through fully in this mic'd up video that the Titans posted. But the thing that stood out to me was the leadership that he's showing. And I noticed that he was particularly working with David Benda, the undrafted free agent rookie out of Hookham, Texas Longhorns. And what I'm drinking to is that Cody Barton is bringing these guys along. Like, he was giving him there were multiple clips of him with Benda, giving him pointers on how he can approach things differently, on how he can use something that they did in a drill last week in a different drill or team period setting this week, and just trying to help bring these guys along. Obviously, the personality was there too. He's cracking jokes. He's being sarcastic. I really think that he's going to be a big boost to this linebacker room, not just from an on-field standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint. So that is what I'm drinking to today.
Yeah, and I'll quickly add, talking about Cody Barton, Mike Borgonzi has consistently talked about the veteran leadership and experience that he brings to the table. We saw that come through in the first media appearance. And when you look at a clip like this, you talk about him coaching the young guys up. He's going to really need to do that this year, because it's not just David Benda who's fighting for a roster spot. It's whoever's going to be starting next to him, whether that's James Williams, Cedric Gray, Otis Reese, whoever it is. James Williams played 111 snaps last year, okay, on defense. That was the most any of those three players played for the Titans last year on defense. So whoever's starting next to Cody Barton is going to be an incredibly inexperienced player, and they're going to be leaning on Cody Barton's veteran experience and leadership to get lined up correctly, get off blocks, understand, pre-snap, post-snap, whether that's in coverage, downhill in the run game, all of those aspects. So I think the Titans were very intentional in their pursuit of Cody Barton, the type of player, type of personality and leader he is. They know he's going to rub off on the young guys.
And it's just interesting to note that the other two guys that were running with the ones next to Cody Barton apparently are Cedric Gray and James Williams at this point. So, the number one Otis Reese podcast will sit and wait for news on his, where he's at in the rotation. But right now, it looks like it's going to be between those two guys, at least to start, for that other interior linebacker position. I'll drink to that, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, serving the community since 1985. A knowledgeable staff that is proud to help you with large parties, themed events, or finding something unique for a special occasion. From birthday parties to milestone celebrations to everyday moments, Sinkers can help with the right drink for every occasion. And if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, you know what I'm about to say. I'm about to tell you to go to the Sinkers Beverages website or check the link in this podcast description to join the In Crowd, which is a free membership club that Sinkers Beverages offers. The In Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. All right, Justin, a little bit more on Calvin Ridley, on Cam Ward's connection, on some stuff that Brian Callahan said about Cam Ward being aggressive in practice. But first, I want to tell the people something that we announced last week, and that's that the book you published, Titans of the South, has a limited re-release. 1,000 copies are now available. And, you know, if you've never heard of this book, if you're new to our podcast, Justin, talk for a second about your book. I'm going to grab it so I can show the people. Go on, talk.
Titans of the South was published last year. It is a full-color coffee table photography book chronicling the entire history of the Tennessee Titans, dating back to the Houston Oilers days. So from 1960 to 2024, there is a chapter on every single season, starting lineups, schedules, of course, their record, game-by-game results, and a summary for every season in franchise history. Big offseason acquisition moves, what happened in the draft, starting quarterback, you name it. About 400 or 500 word summary for every single season, full color photos, as you can see, depth charts, as I talked about, draft history, you name it. And as Graver's about to tell you, I've got a re-release that just went live. It's available for pre-order right now. It includes some special perks, Graver.
Yeah, and before I get to that, I just want to reiterate how cool of an object this is, because I talked about this last week. But for me as a podcaster, it is the perfect background item. For you as a fan, even if you don't have your own podcast, it's still very useful. It's an amazing coffee table book. If you have a man cave or like a room where you watch Titans football, it would be a perfect object, either on a table or on a shelf. Highly recommend this for everyone out there. And as Justin said, yes, the re-release of Titans of the South is 33% off right now. That means this book is just $20, available exclusively at titansofthesouth.com. But that is only for the first 1,000 buyers. And since we talked about this on the podcast last week, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, sales are surging. So this first 1,000 buyers, I don't know how long it's going to last. Now, it is only for U.S. residents, unfortunately. If you are outside the U.S., the book is still available on Amazon, but you won't be able to get the 33% off offer, and you won't be able to get the really cool part of the re-release, which is the exclusive player illustrated trading card of the Titans' new starting quarterback and a new chapter that covers the 2024 to 2025 season, because, Justin, if people don't know, this book came out a year ago before the 2024 season even happened.
Yeah, so the new chapter is going to include a little bit of the 2024 season, but I'm going to gloss over it rather quickly and get to the 2025 offseason, which is talking about the excitement surrounding Cam Ward. You're going to want the new chapter, hint, hint. You're going to want that exclusive illustrated trading card that comes with this re-release. And as Graver said, it's only $20 right now for the first 1,000 buyers. And that includes free shipping within the U.S. as well. So you're not paying extra for shipping, $20 plus free shipping for the re-release. You're going to love the new perks that come with the 2025 release of Titans of the South.
So titansofthesouth.com, check it out, get your copy. If you have a copy or you got a new copy, let us know in the comments. We want to see all the people, and Justin wants to thank you personally. So go ahead, drop it in the comments if you have gotten a book. All right, Justin, back to the topic at hand. I wanted to talk about the Calvin Ridley connection because, you know, the whole premise of this episode is tracking Cam Ward's progress. And last week we talked about how Brian Callahan, noted that it was a strategic decision to put their lockers side by side. We saw them stretching side by side in the pre-warm-up during last week's open media session. And today, I think, is just another evolution of that. They're going to continue to be getting closer and closer with each other. And I saw a note that said Calvin Ridley was actually encouraging Cam Ward to have conversations with other receivers between reps also, because he's almost focusing too much on Calvin Ridley and their connection. But I do think their connection is the most important, because looking at, like you said, it's Calvin Ridley and friends, right? If I had to project how many snaps each guy's going to play, I would guess that Calvin Ridley plays between 80 and 90% of snaps. And the rest of the room is probably going to be more or less a constant rotation, right? You're going to have Tyler Lockett, but Tyler Lockett's not going to play that many snaps, given where he's at in his career. And also because there are other guys that can offer something a little different, an extra gear, maybe some extra burst, speed, explosion with the rookie class and Shamir Adike, Alec Iomanner, a guy like Jaquan Jackson or James Prochet. If one of them makes the roster, that's just another element. Xavier Restrepo is a totally different guy that's going to play almost exclusively in the slot, we expect. So there's a lot of bodies. I didn't even mention Van Jefferson.
Who Cam Ward apparently likes and has been making a couple plays at OTAs himself.
Exactly. So I think like Calvin Ridley is going to be out on the field almost every snap, and then the rest of the group is going to rotate in and out based on the concept, based on what they want to show the defense before they run the play, and based on what they're trying to accomplish with the play, deep shots, screens, run game, all of that stuff. So it is important for Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley to have maybe a better connection than he has with the other receivers. And we know he has a great connection with Xavier Restrepo already. But I think that this is it's a good development. My question is, are we going to look back on Cam Ward's comment on that Fortnite stream about Calvin Ridley being a top 5 receiver at the end of this year and be like, maybe he was onto something after Calvin Ridley has like a 1,500-yard, 15-touchdown season because Cam Ward and him just developed such a connection.
He scored 4 touchdowns last year, so 15 would be quite the leap. I'm not ready to go that far. I mean, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, we've got some outstanding wide receivers in the National Football League right now. So I'm not willing to go that far, but I will say this. I think Cam Ward's a very smart individual. He knows who's going to be catching the football for him this year.
Last thing I have here is something else we touched on last week, but Brian Callahan talked about it again on Tuesday, and that is, he said, quote, "This time of year is for finding out what you can get away with." And this was in reference to Cam Ward. Apparently last week it was reported wasn't really taking the check down as much as the other quarterbacks. That he's aggressively always looking to attack downfield, and rather than take the check down, he's looking to extend the play and get out of the pocket and keep his eyes further down the field. Whereas at that point in the play, a lot of quarterbacks would be like, instead of bailing the pocket to keep the play alive, just check it down to a guy. And I think that there is a balance he's going to have to strike here. This was one of the critiques of his coming out of college, was that he too often looked for the big play and didn't take the easy stuff enough. This was a problem with Will Levis last year. Before I get into what Brian Callahan is trying to get out of these practices, is this something that you're concerned about at all, given how early it is in his development? Or are you thinking like, we might be talking about this a little bit in October, in November, if things don't improve?
I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not going to make a big deal of it now, but I think it'd be silly of us and maybe a little biased of us to completely gloss over it, which we're not doing. It is something he's going to have to learn and get a little bit better at. I was going to bring up, I was afraid to, but I was going to bring up that Will Levis really, really struggled in this area last year. If you're looking for some positivity, the big difference between the two of them is Cam Ward's got really good pocket presence and Will Levis has really bad pocket presence, right? So when Will Levis is holding onto the football, he's not extending the pocket because he's really bad at it. When Cam Ward's holding onto the football, he's pretty good at extending the pocket, but you're also not going to do that with success every single time, right? So it is about finding that right balance and taking those checkdowns as necessary. I mean, remember Callahan last year talking about trying to make Levis a bit more of a system quarterback and take what the defense gives you. Well, Cam Ward's going to have to do a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, and he did say that, he is encouraging all of the quarterbacks, not just Cam Ward, to try out some more aggressive throws, and especially for the rookie, to find out what he can and can't get away with. But then he noted that he also has to understand that there will be a time where they need to move the ball forward, and he needs to take the easy checkdowns and easy completions. So where I'm at on this issue is, I would say right now I'm not concerned. However, I could see a future scenario where you and I are talking about this in October, about how Cam Ward is trying to hunt the big play a little too much, and we might refer back to this conversation then. I don't know if that path will materialize. That's one of many different future realities that we could be living in, because again, it is early June. It is the time to experiment, and Cam Ward has shown to be able to take coaching and, change what he's doing and improve his game for the better and understand why he needs to do certain things. So I think that this is one of those things that he's going to continue getting better at. And, on that timeline I just described, there's another timeline where we're in training camp and we're like, wow, Cam Ward's taking the checkdowns, but he's still finding the balance and attacking aggressively. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think it's an issue right now, but it is something that we can talk about because, again, the premise of the podcast, tracking Cam Ward's progress. And that's one of the things that we'll be tracking as the offseason continues to unfold. Anything else, Justin? Any of those little notes that I said we don't care about that you want to just maybe throw out there quickly just because we need to?
Yeah, well, one that I thought was intriguing was to hear Tracy Rocker, D-line coach, talking about T'Vondre Sweat, challenging him to be a better, more mature player, not off the field, a more mature player on the field this year. Look, make no mistake, T'Vondre Sweat was a good football player last year, pretty damn good football player for the Titans as a rookie. If there is a step to be taken, it's as a pass rusher. We said that for him coming out of Texas, right? He had 2 sacks and I think fewer than 30 quarterback pressures last year. Now, again, I don't want to make this sound like he wasn't good. He was pretty good and he was very impactful on early downs. I still think there's some untapped potential for him as a pass rusher. And it sounds like the Titans feel the same way about him. And Tracy Rocker feels the same way. So interesting and good to hear that they are challenging him. I'd like to see him be a more well-rounded player this year.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. And he was back out on the practice field after, he was in the building last week, but he wasn't seen out there actually practicing. He was out there today. And I'll just point out, PFF has been releasing their top 32 players at every position group series this summer, and the Titans have not really appeared on this list. To my knowledge, the Titans have not appeared on this list even once until Tuesday. They were not in, there was no Titans player in their top 32 cornerbacks, even though, L'Jarius Sneed made this list last year. And if you write off last season as injury prone and expect him to get back to where he was, maybe that's a little too much. But PFF has done that for other players in other lists, talking about players who were bad last year, still being good and still being in the top 32. L'Jarius Sneed doesn't get that benefit of the doubt. But anyway, back on topic. Jeffrey Simmons came in at number 9, ninth best interior defensive player, and T'Vondre Sweat, number 26. The Titans getting 2 guys in one list. Does that make up for them not getting guys in the other lists?
And there have been some things I'll point out to you. I read a lot of Pro Football Focus. They released a list about a week or two ago, the best 25 players under 25 in the league. They had T'Vondre Sweat as an honorable mention. It was really shocking. They really, really love what T'Vondre Sweat put on tape last year. Another list they put out about 2 weeks ago was which players at every NFL position could take the biggest step forward in the league. So this was not one per team. This was one player per position. Any guesses? I don't know if you're going to get it right. Probably not.
T'Vondre Sweat?
They had Peter Skoronski as the one guard in the NFL that could take the biggest step forward out of any in the league this year. So they've been showing the Titans a little bit of love.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I had a running joke going on Twitter with Zach Lyons about how if you're a Titans fan, just don't click a list because you're not going to be happy with where you end up. 3 of them, technically, with the guard, T'Vondre Sweat knocking on the best players under 25. Even I thought that was a bit much to include them. There are a lot of good players under 25 in the National Football League, so that one was really, really impressive. All right, Justin. Any other thoughts? I mean, I'm pretty much good. I guess I'll just say while we're talking about offensive line, Kevin Zeitler, Brian Callahan mentioned, is in the building, in the meeting rooms, but they're taking it easy with him, being smart with his body, being 35 years old. There's no need to put extra wear and tear on him, although you'd like to see him start to develop some chemistry on that offensive line because we know how much of that plays a critical factor in that group playing as a unit. But we'll worry about that when the pads come on in training camp. I think now is not the time to stress about it. Jeffrey Simmons still not there. I'll stop talking about it. Whatever. Jeffrey Simmons is fine. Who cares? Any final other nuggets here, or is it time to say goodbye?
I'll add this about Kevin Zeitler. We both agree that OTAs are so important. It's funny how unimportant they feel when you've got a 35-year-old guard who's been playing at a high level for a decade. Right? The Titans are very much he's there. He'd be on the field if they asked him to be, I assume. They're the ones it's OTAs. You're 35. You've been really friggin' good throughout your entire career. We don't need to see you right now. So that really puts one roster move. We never cover these. We always cover roster moves, but they signed our running back Ty Davis Price, played at LSU, was a 3rd-round pick of the death taxes in the 49ers drafting running backs in the 3rd round. He was a 3rd-round pick of the 49ers 2 years ago, top 100. That's a premium pick for a running back. They obviously hated him in San Francisco because they've already cut him. He comes over to Tennessee. The Titans cut UDFA running back Micah Bernard. They've already cut a couple UDFAs, the Titans have, that they signed in April. So out with the UDFA, in with a 3rd-year, former 3rd-round pick who's already approaching bust territory. He'll try to push Julius Chestnut. I mean, he's in his 3rd year. He's barely played.
I thought you were about to say a third round pick who's already been to 2 Super Bowls, one with the 49ers and one with the Eagles. Like, come on, this guy's got championship experience. This is exactly what they need.
You know what? Couldn't bring him in during Cam Ward's rookie year because Titans are going to Super Bowl this year. Ty Davis-Price can keep his streak going, but they're trying to push Julius Chestnut for the RB4 spot. I'm not even comfortable putting him in the R3 battle. I think that belongs to Khalil Malling, 6th-round pick out of Michigan. But yeah, they swap out back-end running backs, bring in a guy that was once upon a time a top 100 pick.
Yeah, all right. So that's it. Those are the Titans OTA updates from Tuesday, June 3rd. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. And if you are tuning in, of course we appreciate you. I'm not going to ever get mad at anyone for tuning in. I will say I'm like a little hurt that you guys aren't hitting the subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel. You want a stat? I know we love stats because we're football people. Here's a stat. The percentage of viewers on our channel who are subscribed to the channel, 34.5%. That means the unsubscribed percentage is 65.5%. If you are watching this and you're not subscribed, again, thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Titans diehards only. But we would appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. You know, in the last 28 days, Justin, I gave this stat before, not too long ago. This is an updated one. 15.5 thousand returning viewers to the channel. Yet we have not cracked 4,000 subscribers. Tell me how that makes sense? It doesn't. We're pushing hard for the 4K subscriber number, and once we hit that goal, then we'll push hard for the next number. But for now, we're focused on 4,000. So if you're watching this, please hit subscribe, drop a comment below. Did you order Justin Melo's book? How much are you tracking Cam Ward's progress? Are there other things happening right now that you actually do care about, that I'm wrong, and that you want us to talk a little bit more about? Let us know in the comments below. Give the video a like, and thanks also to Sinkers Beverages. Justin, final word goes to you.
Appreciate everyone for supporting Titans of the South. So excited about the 2025 re-release of the book. You're going to love the exclusive illustrated trading player card. So really appreciate you guys. Leave your comments below. Let us know if you order the book. Let us know anything you like. I am in there, Graver sometimes as well, but I'm in there personally responding to every single comment you guys leave on the channel. We really appreciate you guys. And our favorite aspect of this podcast is the ability to connect directly with you. So whatever you got to say, some of you are leaving long comments. I'm going in there and responding with long comments. You want to talk about depth chart, position battles, whatever it is, we are connecting directly with you.
And keep dropping them, because that helps us understand what you guys want us to talk about more. It makes our content better for you, which is the whole point, is the content is for you. And a little bit to satisfy our egos, because we like hearing ourselves talk, or else we wouldn't have a podcast. All right, that was a joke. That'll do it for this one. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. I'm working on something. Justin, I'm working on something.
Yes, you are.
I don't know. I might be the only one who cares about this, but I think virtual reality is about to take over sports in general, not just football, not just quarterbacking. I think we're on the precipice of a major revolution. VR stands for virtual reality. No, it stands for virtual revolution. It's coming, and I'm making a video about the impacts of it and how the Titans are using it with Cam Ward. And it's going to be another one of those, like, you know, voiceover style videos. So hopefully everyone will click on that and get us up there in views. And, you know, I'd love to have another banger like the Cam Ward, the Chosen One video. So that's what I'm working on, and that'll be out whenever I have time to finish making it, but probably not this week, but who knows? We'll see what happens. And then Justin and I will be back later this week to keep talking about the Titans. Who knows what we're going to say? I don't even know yet. We'll figure it out as it happens. But until then, that's why we need you guys to comment. Until then, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.